The transport ship Void Whisper shuddered as another plasma bolt struck its shields. Commander Zara Kethval pressed her clawed fingers against the tactical display, her silver scales rippling with barely contained frustration. 3 human cargo vessels had already been destroyed in this sector, their crews scattered to the void like dust. "Status report," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority of the Galactic Defense Corps' most decorated female officer. "Shields at 60%, Commander," reported her tactical officer, a 4-armed Zenthari whose blue skin had turned pale with stress. "The Raider formation is maintaining pursuit vector, 14 ships, all heavily armed." Zara's yellow eyes narrowed as she studied the display. The Crimson Fang pirates had been terrorizing this shipping lane for months, and despite her squadron's best efforts, they remained elusive. Today's mission was supposed to be routine, escort a convoy of human traders through the disputed zone. Instead, they'd walked into an ambush. "Where are the human vessels?" she asked. "Holding formation behind us, Commander. There." Remarkably calm for civilians under fire. That was putting it mildly. Zara had expected the human traders to panic, scatter, or at least transmit desperate pleas for protection. Instead, they maintained perfect formation, their communications channels silent except for brief tactical updates. It was unsettling. She activated the comm channel to the lead human ship. "Merchant vessel Terra's Pride, this is Commander Kethval. We're going to execute evasive maneuvers. Stay close to our formation and—" "Negative, Commander." The voice that cut through her transmission was calm, almost conversational. "This is Captain Marcus Chen. We'll handle our own maneuvering. You focus on those raiders." Zara's crest flared in irritation. "Captain Chen, with respect, your civilian vessels. This is what the Defense Corps is for. Let us." "Commander," Chen's voice held a note of gentle amusement. "Trust me on this one. My people know what they're doing." Before Zara could respond, her sensors officer's voice cut through the bridge chatter. "Commander, the raiders are breaking formation. There. They're heading straight for the human ships." Zara spun toward the tactical display, her heart sinking. 12 raider vessels had detached from the main group and were accelerating toward the convoy at maximum burn. The humans were sitting ducks. "All ships intercept course. We can't let them." "Commander Kethval," Captain Chen's voice was still maddeningly calm. "I'd recommend your ships maintain current position. This is about to get interesting." On the display, the lead human vessel, Terra's Pride suddenly accelerated. Not the gradual buildup Zara expected from a cargo hauler, but a sharp, violent thrust that would have crushed an unprepared crew against their bulkheads. The other human ships followed suit, their formation shifting with military precision. "What in the void?" Zara whispered. The first raider ship opened fire, plasma bolts streaking toward Terra's Pride. The human vessel didn't try to dodge. Instead, it rolled slightly to port, and the plasma fire passed harmlessly through empty space where the ship had been a split second before. It was as if Chen had known exactly where the shots would be. "Impossible," breathed her tactical officer. "That was a predictive dodge, but their sensors aren't military grade. They can't track targeting solutions that precisely." Zara watched in growing amazement as the human convoy began to move. What had looked like panic turned out to be the most coordinated defensive maneuver she'd ever seen from civilian vessels. The 6 cargo ships formed a tight formation, each one covering the other's blind spots with movements so fluid they seemed choreographed. The raiders closed in, expecting easy prey. Instead, they found themselves facing something entirely unexpected. Terra's Pride suddenly dropped its rear cargo bay doors. What emerged wasn't trade goods. It was a wing of small, angular fighters that Zara didn't recognize. They moved like nothing she'd ever seen, weaving between the raider ships with an almost casual grace. "Commander," her communications officer called out, his voice tight with disbelief. "I'm reading weapon signatures from those fighters. High-energy pulse cannons, torpedo tubes. These aren't civilian craft." "No," Zara said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn. "They're not." The first raider ship exploded in a brilliant flash. Then the second. The human fighters moved through the pirate formation like blade fish through a school of krill, their weapons precise and devastating. But it wasn't just their skill that amazed Zara, it was their restraint. Each shot was carefully placed, targeting engines and weapon systems rather than going for kills. "Why aren't they destroying them?" her tactical officer asked. Before Zara could answer, one of the raider ships broke away from the formation and headed straight for her command vessel. Its weapons charged, plasma building in its main cannons. Evasive maneuvers, Zara commanded. But before her ship could respond, one of the human fighters streaked past them. A single, perfectly placed shot disabled the raider's weapons array. The pirate ship spun away, powerless but intact. Void Whisper, this is Eagle One. The pilot's voice was crisp, professional. You might want to back off a bit. We're about to make this personal. Zara found herself complying almost without thinking, ordering her ship to retreat to a safe distance. Around them, the battle was turning into something more like a demonstration. The human fighters moved with impossible precision, their formation flying so tight it seemed like they shared a single mind. Within minutes, it was over. 12 raider ships hung dead in space, their crews alive but their ships completely disabled. The human fighters reformed on Asterisk Terra's pride with the same casual efficiency they'd shown throughout the engagement. Commander Kethful, Captain Chen's voice came through the comm, still carrying that note of easy confidence. All raiders neutralized. Your salvage crews can collect them at their convenience. Zara stared at the tactical display, trying to process what she'd just witnessed. Captain Chen, what exactly are you people? A chuckle came through the comm. Just traders, Commander. We're just traders who happened to serve in a few wars before we got into the shipping business. A few wars? Zara's crest was fully extended now, a sign of either extreme aggression or complete shock. Captain, that was the most precise combat flying I've ever seen. Your people moved like they'd been fighting together for decades. Some of us have been. Look, Commander, we appreciate the escort, but we've got deliveries to make. Unless you need anything else. Zara opened her mouth, then closed it again. In 30 years of military service, she'd never been so thoroughly outclassed by civilians. No, Captain, safe travels. As the human convoy resumed course, her tactical officer leaned close to her chair. Commander, should we report this to Fleet Command? Zara watched the human ships disappear into hyperspace, their formation as perfect in departure as it had been in combat. Report what, exactly? That a group of human traders just gave us a master class in small unit tactics, that they disabled 12 raider ships without breaking formation or losing a single vessel. Her bridge crew exchanged glances. It was her communications officer who finally spoke up. Commander, with respect, the humans have been in space for less than 50 years. They're supposed to be the new species, barely out of their own system. How could civilians fight like that? Zara settled back in her command chair, her mind racing. She thought about the stories she'd heard, whispered reports from other sectors about human merchant vessels that seemed to have military escorts even when none were officially assigned. About shipping convoys that pirates learned to avoid rather than attack. About human traders who carried cargo manifests listing agricultural products but moved through dangerous space like they owned it. I don't know, she admitted finally, but I think we've been making some very wrong assumptions about our newest galactic neighbors. Her sensor officer's voice interrupted her thoughts. Commander, we're receiving a transmission. It's from the Crimson Fang flagship. Zara straightened, put it through. The voice that came through the comm was harsh, filtered through a translation matrix that gave it an artificial edge. Galactic vessel, this is War Leader Mechthon of the Crimson Fang. We demand the immediate release of our captured ships and crews. War Leader, this is Commander Kethful of the GDC vessel Void Whisper. Your ships attacked civilian convoys in violation of galactic law. They will be processed according to... I care nothing for your laws, Scaleskin. Mechthon's voice carried a note of fury that made Zara's crew tense. Our prey was taken by trickery, not honest combat. We demand satisfaction. Before Zara could respond, another voice cut through the channel. This is Captain Chen of the merchant vessel Asterisk Terra's Pride. Zara blinked in surprise. The humans had left the system. How were they still monitoring communications? War Leader Mechthon, Chen's voice was conversational, almost friendly. I couldn't help but overhear your transmission. You seem upset about something. Human, the word came out like a curse. You dare to use deception against the Crimson Fang? Your merchant ships carry hidden weapons, fight with cowards' tricks. This is not the way of honorable warriors. There was a pause, and when Chen spoke again, his voice had lost all trace of friendliness. War leader, you attack unarmed cargo vessels and murder civilian crews for sport. I'm not sure you get to lecture anyone about honor. We are raiders, Mechthan's voice rose to a roar. We take by strength, as is our right, but you fight like prey that thinks itself predator. When we meet again, human, there will be no tricks to save you. Another pause, then Chen's voice came back, and something in its tone made Zara's scales crawl. War leader, you're welcome to try, but let me give you some free advice. The next time you want to attack human ships, you might want to bring more than 14 vessels. You're going to need them. The channel cut out, leaving Zara's bridge in stunned silence. Her tactical officer was the first to speak. Commander, was he threatening an entire pirate fleet? Zara stared at the empty space where the human convoy had been, remembering the casual precision of their combat, the way they disabled 12 ships without seeming to work up a sweat. I don't think it was a threat, she said quietly. I think it was a promise. She activated her secure communications array, opening a channel directly to Fleet Command. Admiral Vexter, this is Commander Kethful. I need to speak with you immediately. Priority Alpha. While she waited for the connection, Zara pulled up the human trade registration files. On paper, they looked exactly like what they claimed to be: cargo haulers, transportation specialists, merchants looking to establish trade routes in galactic space. But paper, she reflected, could lie. When Admiral Vexter's scaled face appeared on her screen, his expression was already grim. Commander, I assume this is about the incident with the human convoy. Sir, how did you? Because you're the third commander to file a priority report about human civilians today. Commander Kethful, I need you to tell me everything you saw, and I mean everything. As Zara began her report, she found herself wondering about Captain Chen's parting words. The confidence in his voice when he'd essentially challenged an entire pirate fleet. The casual way he dismissed 14 armed raiders as barely worth his attention. She thought about the human fighters that had emerged from those cargo bays, moving with a precision that spoke of years of training and combat experience. About the way the convoy had maintained formation under fire, as if coordinated by a single mind. And she thought about something else, something that had been bothering her since the engagement ended. The pirates had ambushed them at the worst possible location, a navigation choke point where there was no room to maneuver. It was the perfect trap. Except the humans had been ready for it. They'd known the pirates were coming. Admiral, she said, interrupting her own report, I think we need to ask ourselves a very important question. Which is, who exactly are these humans, and what aren't they telling us? Admiral Vexter's expression darkened. That, Commander, is exactly what I intend to find out. As the call ended, Zara stood alone on her bridge, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Captain Chen and his merchant convoy were continuing their journey, carrying cargo and secrets in equal measure. For the first time in her career, she found herself afraid of a species that was supposed to be humanity's juniors in the galactic community. Because if Chen was right, if the humans really were just traitors who had served in a few wars, then what did that say about the wars they'd been fighting? And what did it say about the species that had been fighting them? Her communications officer's voice broke her reverie. Commander, we're receiving a coded transmission from Fleet Intelligence. Eyes only, highest security rating. Zara sighed and returned to her chair. Something told her that her simple convoy escort mission had just become much more complicated. The message was brief and to the point. Report to Starbase 7 immediately. Bring all sensor data and crew testimony regarding human convoy encounter. Operation classifications. Galactic Security Level 1. Level 1. Zara had never seen a Level 1 classification outside of war planning sessions. As her ship turned toward Starbase 7, she couldn't shake the memory of Captain Chen's voice, calm and confident even when facing overwhelming odds. There had been something in that tone, something that spoke of absolute certainty. It was the voice of someone who had faced worse odds and won. Much worse odds. The question was, against whom? Starbase 7 hung in the void like a massive flower, its 8 arms extending from a central hub that housed some of the most sensitive intelligence operations in the galaxy. As Commander Zara Kethful's ship approached the docking bay, she could see the increased security presence, ships she didn't recognize, fighters in formations that spoke of high alert status. Whatever was happening, it was big. The debriefing room was unlike anything Zara had seen before. Instead of the usual military personnel, she found herself facing a panel that included representatives from 6 different species, all wearing the black insignia of galactic intelligence. At the head of the table sat Admiral Vexter, his usually composed features showing signs of strain. "Commander Kethfel," the Admiral began without preamble, "before we proceed, I need you to understand that everything discussed in this room is classified at the highest possible level. The information you're about to receive could fundamentally alter our understanding of galactic politics." Zara straightened in her chair. "Understood, sir." "Good." Admiral Vexter activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. "What I'm about to show you is the result of 3 months of intensive investigation into human activities throughout the galaxy." The display showed a star map of known space, with human colonies and trade routes marked in blue. At first glance, it looked exactly like what Zara would expect, the expansion pattern of a young species establishing its place in galactic society. Then the Admiral changed the display parameters. Suddenly, the map was overlaid with incident reports. Pirate attacks thwarted, illegal mining operations shut down, smuggling rings disrupted. Every single one had involved human merchants or traders who had somehow been in the right place at the right time. "This is impossible," Zara whispered. "We thought so too," replied Director Keimtal, a tall, mantis-like S-Sith whose compound eyes never seemed to blink. "A species barely 50 years in space shouldn't have this kind of operational reach. More importantly, they shouldn't have this kind of combat capability." The display shifted again, this time showing detailed technical readouts. Ship configurations, weapons signatures, flight patterns. Zara recognized some of them from her encounter with Captain Chen's convoy. "Director," she asked carefully, "what exactly are you suggesting?" It was Admiral Vexter who answered. "We're not suggesting anything, Commander. We're telling you. The humans aren't just traders or merchants or explorers. They're something else entirely." A new voice spoke from the far end of the table. "They're soldiers." Zara turned to see who had spoken and felt her blood chill. The figure was heavily scarred, his cybernetic arm indicating serious combat trauma. She recognized him from intelligence briefings. Colonel Threndock, formerly of the Hegemony's elite assault corps, now working with galactic intelligence on what were euphemistically called special projects. "Colonel," Admiral Vexter said, "would you please share your analysis?" Threndock stood, his movement still carrying the precise bearing of an active military officer despite his retirement. "Commander Kethfel, I've spent 40 years studying human military doctrine. Not their official releases, not their diplomatic statements, but their actual combat patterns as observed in dozens of encounters across the galaxy." He activated a different display, this one showing tactical formations and combat maneuvers. What you witnessed wasn't civilian self-defense. It was a textbook example of advanced small-unit tactics, executed with a precision that indicates extensive training and combat experience. Zara studied the formations, recognizing patterns that mirrored elite military units. "But sir, the humans have been at peace for decades. Their official military is barely large enough to defend their home system." "Their official military, yes." Threndock's scarred face split into what might have been a smile. "Commander, are you familiar with human history?" "I've read the basic briefings. They had a period of internal conflicts before achieving spaceflight, then a relatively peaceful expansion period." "The basic briefings leave out some crucial details." The display changed to show historical data. "Humans didn't just have a period of conflicts, Commander. They spent most of their history perfecting the art of warfare. By the time they reached space, they had developed military doctrines that make our most elite units look like academy cadets." Director Keimtal leaned forward. "Colonel Threndock, you're suggesting that every human civilian is actually a trained soldier." "Not everyone, no, but a significant percentage, yes. Humans have something they call veteran transition programs. Officially, these programs help former soldiers adapt to civilian life. Unofficially," he paused. "Commander Kethfel, what did Captain Chen tell you about his background?" Zara thought back to the conversation. "He said they were traders who had served in a few wars before getting into the shipping business." "A few wars?" Threndock's laugh held no humor. "Commander, humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. When they say a few wars, they're displaying the same kind of understatement they use when they describe a catastrophic battle as a minor disagreement. Admiral Vexter activated another display. Commander, we need you to review this intelligence report. It concerns the Zarathi campaign approximately 15 years ago. Zara had heard of the Zarathi campaign, a brutal conflict between the Galactic Republic and a species of insected invaders from outside known space. The war had lasted 2 years and cost millions of lives before the Zarathi were finally driven back. Sir, I was still a junior officer during that period. I wasn't involved in the campaign. No, but humans were. Officially, they provided logistical support and medical aid. Unofficially, Admiral Vexter pulled up classified after-action reports. Commander, I want you to read the tactical analysis from the Battle of Kepler Station. The report was dense with military terminology, but as Zara read, her understanding of the human role in the war began to shift. The logistical support had involved cargo ships that somehow always managed to be in position to resupply frontline units under fire. The medical aid had included field hospitals that operated in combat zones no civilian organization should have been able to reach. And the civilian volunteers, who had aided in evacuating wounded soldiers, had demonstrated tactical knowledge and combat skills that impressed hardened military veterans. This is all circumstantial, Zara said finally. Is it? Colonel Threndock activated a secure video file. This was recorded during the final assault on the Zarathi command ship. Officially, it shows Republic Marines conducting a boarding action. The video was grainy, taken from a helmet camera during intense combat. Zara watched Republic soldiers advance through narrow corridors, trading fire with defending Zarathi warriors. It was exactly what she expected to see. Then she noticed the voices. Some of the Republic Marines were speaking in human languages. Colonel, this doesn't prove. Watch the tactics, Commander. Watch how they move. Zara studied the video more carefully. The human volunteers weren't just following Republic soldiers, they were leading them. Their movements were fluid, coordinated, professional. They advanced through the ship like they'd done it 1,000 times before. Because she realized with growing shock, they probably had. Director Keimtal, she said slowly, how many conflicts have humans been involved in? The Sith's compound eyes shifted, a sign of discomfort. That's difficult to determine. Officially, they've participated in humanitarian missions, peacekeeping operations, and trade security actions. But their definition of humanitarian mission appears to be somewhat broader than standard galactic usage. Admiral Vexter pulled up another star map, this one showing conflict zones throughout the galaxy over the past 30 years. Human presence was marked in discrete symbols, medical ships, cargo vessels, diplomatic missions. Commander, look at the pattern. Every major conflict in the past 3 decades has involved human civilian presence, pirates being driven from established territories, slaver operations shut down seemingly overnight, illegal weapons shipments mysteriously disappearing. Zara stared at the map, the implications washing over her. You're saying the humans have been fighting a shadow war across the entire galaxy. Not fighting, Colonel Threndock corrected. Winning, and they've been doing it so quietly that most species don't even realize it's happening. But why, Zara asked. What do they gain from it? It was Admiral Vexter who answered. We think they're preparing for something. The question is what? Director Keimtal activated another display, this one showing communication intercepts and intelligence reports. Commander, we've been monitoring human communications for patterns. What we've found is concerning. The display showed a network of coded transmissions, cargo manifests that didn't quite add up, and financial transactions that followed no logical commercial pattern. This looks like, Zara paused, not wanting to voice the obvious conclusion. A military supply network, Colonel Threndock finished. Weapons, ammunition, combat equipment, medical supplies, all moving through supposedly civilian trade routes, and all of it converging on key strategic points throughout the galaxy. Admiral Vexter leaned back in his chair. Commander, 3 days ago, we received intelligence that suggests the scope of human military preparation may be even larger than we suspected. A new file appeared on the display, this one marked with security restrictions Zara had never seen before. This is a report from deep space monitoring stations in the Outer Rim. They've detected massive ship movements in uninhabited systems, ships using human drive signatures but not appearing on any official registries. The sensor readings showed vessels that dwarfed anything in the standard human fleet, ships designed for long-range operations, with weapon configurations that suggested serious military intent. Admiral, Zara said carefully, are you suggesting that humans have a secret military fleet? We're not suggesting it, Commander. We're stating it as fact. The question is, what do they plan to do with it? Colonel Threndock stood and walked to the display, pointing at specific readings. These aren't patrol vessels or system defense ships. These are deep space combat units, designed for extended operations far from supply lines. In my experience, you only build ships like this for one reason. Which is invasion. The word hung in the air like a physical presence. Zara felt her scales tighten involuntarily, an automatic response to extreme stress. Invasion of whom? She asked. That, Director Keimtal said, is what we need to find out, but we have some theories. The display shifted to show long-range sensor readings from the galactic edge, the region beyond explored space, where only the most advanced deep space monitoring stations could reach. Commander, are you familiar with the concept of a species that has learned to fight from necessity rather than choice? Zara considered the question. You mean a species that developed military capabilities as a survival mechanism? Exactly. Now consider this. Humans claim they achieved space flight through scientific curiosity and peaceful exploration. But every piece of evidence we've gathered suggests otherwise. They didn't reach for the stars because they wanted to explore. They reached for them because they were running from something. The implications hit Zara like a physical blow. You think something drove them into space. We think something is still out there, Admiral Vexter said quietly. Something that made humans into the most efficient fighting force the galaxy has ever seen, something they've been preparing to face again. Colonel Threndock returned to his seat, his expression grim. Commander, in all our encounters with humans, have you ever seen one show genuine fear? Not caution, not concern, but actual fear. Zara thought about Captain Chen, facing down 14 pirate ships with casual confidence. She thought about the human fighters, moving through combat like they were dancing rather than fighting for their lives. No, she admitted, they seem to treat threats as inconveniences. Because compared to what they're really afraid of, everything else is an inconvenience. Admiral Vexter stood, his expression grave. Commander, your mission is about to change. We need someone to make contact with the humans directly to find out what they know about threats to galactic security. Sir, why me? Because Captain Chen seemed to trust you. And because if our theories are correct, the galaxy is going to need human military expertise very soon. Director Keimtal activated a final display, this one showing deep space sensor readings from the very edge of known space. Commander, we're detecting unusual energy signatures in the void between, patterns that don't match any known technology. Zara studied the readings, her military training automatically analyzing the data. These look like ship signatures, but the scale is enormous. What could generate energy readings this large? We don't know, Admiral Vexter said. But 3 days ago, those signatures started moving toward galactic space. At their current speed, they'll reach the Outer Rim colonies in approximately 6 months. And you think the humans know what they are? We think the humans have been preparing to fight them for 30 years. As the briefing ended, and Zara prepared for her new mission, she found herself thinking about the question that had started it all. Captain Chen's casual confidence in the face of overwhelming odds, his dismissal of 14 pirate ships as barely worth his attention. Now she understood. He hadn't been showing off or demonstrating human superiority. He'd been practicing for something much worse. The human colony of New Geneva existed on the edge of known space, officially listed as an agricultural settlement with a population of 2 million. As Commander Zara Kethvel's diplomatic vessel approached the planet, she couldn't shake the feeling that official reports rarely told the whole truth when it came to human settlements. Her suspicions were confirmed before they even entered orbit. Commander, her sensor operator called out, I'm reading defensive installations throughout the system. Automated weapon platforms, early warning satellites, patrol craft on regular sweeps. This is military-grade security for a farming colony. Zara studied the tactical display. The defensive network was subtle but comprehensive, the kind of setup that would make any attacking force pay dearly for every meter of space. Are they responding to our approach? Negative, sir. They're maintaining standard patterns, but... He paused, adjusting his instruments. Commander, they've been scanning us since we entered the system. Deep scans, military-grade sensors. They know exactly who we are and what we're carrying. Before Zara could respond, her communications array activated with an incoming transmission. The voice that emerged was crisp, professional, and utterly calm despite the fact that an unscheduled Galactic Defense Corps vessel had just appeared in their system. GDC vessel, this is New Geneva Traffic Control. You are cleared for approach to Orbital Station 3. Please follow the navigation beacons and maintain current velocity. A reception committee is waiting for you. New Geneva Control, this is Commander Kethville on a diplomatic mission. We weren't expecting. A reception committee, yes ma'am. They've been expecting you for 3 days. Zara felt her scales ripple with unease. Her mission had been classified at the highest levels, her destination known only to a handful of intelligence officers. Yet somehow, the humans had been expecting her arrival. As her ship docked with the orbital station, Zara got her first close look at human space infrastructure. What she saw made her reassess everything she thought she knew about human technological capabilities. The station wasn't just large, it was enormous. The docking bay alone could have accommodated her entire squadron, and sensor readings indicated multiple levels extending in all directions. More concerning were the weapon emplacements she could see through the viewports, devices that looked far more advanced than anything in the official human technology reports. The airlock cycled, and Zara stepped through to find herself facing a reception committee that was unlike any diplomatic greeting she'd experienced. The leader was a woman who appeared to be in her 50s, with graying hair and the kind of calm competence that spoke of decades of command experience. She wore civilian clothes, but her bearing was unmistakably military. Commander Kethville, the woman said, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. I'm Director Sarah Chen, New Geneva Colonial Administration. Welcome to our little corner of the galaxy. Director Chen? Zara accepted the handshake, nodding the woman's firm grip and the calluses that spoke of hands-on experience with equipment that wasn't normally found in administrative offices. Thank you for receiving us on such short notice. Oh, we had plenty of notice. Your mission was authorized 3 days ago, which gives us approximately 72 hours to prepare for these kinds of visits. Director Chen's smile was friendly but didn't quite reach her eyes. Shall we head to the conference room? I believe you have some questions for us. As they walked through the station's corridors, Zara couldn't help but notice details that reinforced her growing suspicions. The personnel they passed wore civilian clothes, but moved with military bearing. The maintenance workers carried tools that looked suspiciously like weapons. Even the decoration scheme seemed designed to provide cover points and clear fields of fire. Director, she said carefully, this is quite an impressive facility for an agricultural colony. Oh, we do more than farming here, Commander, much more. The conference room was spacious, with a large window that provided a view of the planet below. As they settled around a table that could have accommodated a full diplomatic mission, Zara found herself studying Director Chen more carefully. There was something familiar about the woman's features. After a moment, she realized what it was. Director, are you related to Captain Marcus Chen of the merchant vessel * Terra's Pride? My nephew, the answer came without hesitation or embarrassment. Bright boy, good instincts, terrible poker player, I assume you've met him. We've encountered his convoy, yes, under combat conditions. Ah, the Crimson Fang incident. Yes, Marcus mentioned that, said you handled yourself well under pressure, high praise coming from him. Zara felt a chill run down her spine. The engagement with Captain Chen's convoy had happened less than a week ago, in a system hundreds of light years away. Yet Director Chen spoke about it as if they'd discussed it over dinner. Director, how exactly did your nephew mention that engagement? We're quite far from any communication relays. Director Chen's smile became more genuine, and for the first time, Zara saw a hint of amusement in her eyes. Commander, you didn't come all the way out here to discuss our communication systems. You came because your intelligence services have figured out that humans aren't exactly what we appear to be. The directness of the statement caught Zara off guard. I'm not sure I understand what you mean. Of course you do. Your people aren't stupid, Commander. You've noticed that human merchants have an unusual tendency to be in the right place at the right time. You've observed that our civilian vessels carry remarkably sophisticated defensive systems. You've probably even figured out that a significant percentage of our colonists have military backgrounds. Director Chen stood and walked to the window, gazing down at the planet below. The question isn't what you've discovered, Commander. The question is what you plan to do about it. Zara took a deep breath, deciding that directness was the only way forward. Director, my government believes that humans are preparing for a conflict that threatens galactic security. We need to know if that assessment is correct. Your assessment is absolutely correct. The answer came without hesitation. We are preparing for a conflict. We've been preparing for it since the day we left our home system. The only question is whether the galaxy will be ready when it arrives. When what arrives? Instead of answering immediately, Director Chen activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. What appeared was a star map that showed human space and the surrounding regions, but the scale was far larger than any Zara had seen before. Commander, what do you know about human history before space flight? Zara consulted her mental files. You had a period of technological advancement interrupted by various conflicts, then achieved spaceflight and began peaceful expansion. That's the simplified version we tell most species, yes. The reality is somewhat different. The display shifted to show Earth's solar system. Commander, humans didn't leave Earth because we were explorers or scientists or dreamers. We left because staying would have meant extinction. The display changed again, this time showing what looked like a battle zone. Ships engaged in combat around a planet that had been reduced to a burning wasteland. This is what Earth looked like when the last evacuation ships departed, approximately 52 years ago. Zara stared at the image, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. Director, this shows Earth as a war zone, but all our records indicate that humans achieved spaceflight through peaceful scientific advancement. Your records show what we wanted them to show. The truth is that humanity spent the last 20 years of our time on Earth fighting for our survival against an enemy that nearly wiped us out. What enemy? Director Chen manipulated the display, zooming out to show the space around Earth's solar system. What appeared made Zara's blood freeze. Ships, thousands of them, arranged in formations that spoke of military precision and overwhelming force. But these weren't human vessels. They were something else entirely. Something that radiated malevolence even in a holographic recording. We call them the Devourers, though that's not their real name. We never learned their real name because they don't communicate. They just consume. They strip planets of all biological matter, harvest the resources they need, and move on to the next system. Zara studied the alien vessels, nodding design elements that seemed designed for only one purpose: destruction. How did you survive? Barely. And only because we learned to fight dirty, fast, and with absolute commitment to survival. By the time we evacuated Earth, every human still alive was either a soldier, a scientist working on military projects, or a civilian with enough combat training to qualify as special forces by galactic standards. The implications washed over Zara like a cold wave. You're saying that every human in the galaxy is essentially a refugee from a war zone. Not just any war zone, Commander. A war zone where the price of losing was the complete extinction of our species. That tends to focus the mind wonderfully when it comes to military preparedness. Director Chen returned to the table, her expression grave. Commander, your intelligence services are correct about human military capabilities, but they're wrong about our intentions. We're not preparing to invade anyone. We're preparing to defend everyone. Defend against what? Against the Devourers, because they didn't stop with Earth, and they're not going to stop with the empty systems they've been consuming for the past 50 years. The display shifted again, showing deep space sensor readings that looked disturbingly familiar. They're coming this way, and when they arrive, the galaxy is going to need every advantage it can get. Zara compared the sensor readings to the intelligence data she'd been shown at Starbase 7. The energy signatures were identical. Director, you're saying those sensor readings from the void between are your devourers. I'm saying that the advanced scouts have already arrived in this galaxy. The main force won't be far behind. The conference room fell silent as Zara processed this information. Everything she'd learned about human military preparation suddenly made sense from a completely different perspective. How long do we have? Based on our projections, approximately 6 months before the first major assault wave reaches the Outer Rim colonies, 2 years before they reach the galactic core. And you've been preparing for this for 50 years. Director Chen nodded. Every human colony, every trade route, every civilian vessel, it's all part of a defensive network designed to slow them down and gather intelligence on their capabilities. We've been positioning resources, training personnel, and building alliances throughout the galaxy. Alliances. Commander, did you really think all those coincidental encounters between human merchants and threatened civilian populations were accidents? We've been quietly assisting galactic security forces for decades, partly to establish goodwill, but mostly to evaluate potential allies for the coming conflict. Zara thought about Captain Chen's casual efficiency in dealing with the pirates, the way human merchants seemed to appear whenever there was a crisis that needed resolving. You've been testing us, all of us, every species in the galaxy. Not testing exactly, evaluating, learning your capabilities, your weaknesses, your willingness to fight when survival is at stake. Director Chen's expression softened slightly. Commander, humans learned the hard way that survival isn't just about having the best weapons or the strongest ships. It's about having allies you can trust when everything goes wrong. And what's your evaluation of the galactic species? Mixed. Some species have excellent technological capabilities, but lack the tactical flexibility to adapt to unexpected threats. Others have the warrior spirit, but not the industrial base to sustain a long campaign. A few have both, but most have never faced an existential threat that required total commitment to victory. Zara felt a chill of understanding. You don't think the galaxy can win? I think the galaxy can win, but only if everyone understands what they're facing and commits to fighting together. The Devourers aren't raiders or conquerors. They're a force of nature. They don't negotiate, they don't retreat, and they don't leave survivors. The only way to stop them is to destroy them completely. Director Chen activated another display, this one showing tactical analyses and combat projections. Commander, your species has produced some of the finest military minds in the galaxy. Your tactics and strategies are studied in military academies throughout known space. But have you ever fought an enemy that literally wanted to eat your homeworld? The question hung in the air, highlighting the fundamental difference between conventional warfare and the existential threat the humans had faced. No, Zara admitted, we haven't. Then you need to understand that everything you know about military doctrine, everything you've learned about strategy and tactics, is based on fighting opponents who had some kind of rational goal. The Devourers don't have goals, they have appetite. You can't negotiate with hunger, you can't reason with consumption, and you can't frighten something that sees you as nothing more than biomass to be processed. Zara studied the tactical displays, noting the utterly alien nature of the enemy's approach patterns. How do you fight something like that? Very carefully, with absolutely no illusions about the consequences of failure. Director Chen pulled up images of human military installations throughout the galaxy. Commander, every human colony is actually a fortress. Every trade route includes weapon caches and supply depots. Every merchant vessel can convert to military configuration in less than 6 hours. We've spent 50 years building a defensive network that spans the entire galaxy. A network that the galactic government knew nothing about. A network that the galactic government couldn't have built, even if they'd known about the threat. Your political systems require consensus, debate, committee approvals. We didn't have time for any of that. We had to build our defenses while appearing to be harmless newcomers interested in peaceful trade. Zara considered the massive deception that had been required to pull off such an operation. Director, how many people know the truth about human presence in the galaxy? Every adult human, plus select individuals from other species who we've gradually brought into the network. Your Captain Marcus, for instance, works with several non-human crews who have been briefed on the real situation. And now you're telling me. Because in 6 months, secrecy won't matter anymore. The Devourers don't care about politics or diplomacy or whether we've properly filed the correct paperwork with the Galactic Council. They'll arrive, and the only question will be whether the galaxy is ready to fight. Director Chen stood, her bearing shifting from diplomatic to unmistakably military. Commander, I'm going to make you an offer. Your ship, your crew, a full briefing on Devourer capabilities and human defensive preparations. You can return to your superiors with complete intelligence on what's coming and what needs to be done to prepare for it. In exchange for what? Your government's commitment to full military cooperation when the time comes. No political conditions, no territorial disputes, no debates about command structure. When the Devourers arrive, the galaxy needs to present a unified defense, or we're all going to die. Zara thought about everything she'd learned, the scope of the deception, the magnitude of the threat, the careful preparation that had been going on around them for decades. Director, why should we trust you? You've been lying to the entire galaxy for 50 years. Because, Commander, in 6 months you're going to see Devourer ships on your sensors, and everything we've told you will be confirmed by direct observation. At that point, you can either work with us based on 50 years of preparation, or you can try to figure out how to fight them on your own. Director Chen walked back to the window, gazing out at the peaceful-looking agricultural colony that was actually a fortress world. We're not asking for trust based on goodwill, Commander. We're asking for trust based on results. And our results speak for themselves. Humanity survived, and we're going to make sure the galaxy survives too. As Zara prepared for the detailed briefings that would follow, she realized that the question that had brought her here had been answered in a way she never could have expected. Why did humans show no fear? Because they'd already faced the worst possible enemy and learned to fight them. Everything else was just practice. The emergency session of the Galactic Security Council convened in a chamber that had witnessed the resolution of countless crises over the past 3 centuries. But as representatives from 47 species gathered in the Great Hall of the Council Station, Commander Zara Kethvil knew that nothing in their previous experience had prepared them for what they were about to discuss. She stood at the central podium, acutely aware that the next few hours would determine whether the galaxy would unite against an existential threat or fragment into chaos when that threat became undeniable. Behind her, massive holographic displays waited to show the assembled delegates' intelligence that would shatter their understanding of galactic politics. Honorable delegates, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced acoustic system. I stand before you today to present evidence of a threat to galactic civilization that requires immediate and unprecedented cooperation among all member species. A murmur ran through the assembly. The Galactic Council had dealt with regional conflicts, trade disputes, and border skirmishes, but threats to the entire galaxy were the stuff of academic theory, not practical politics. Chancellor Vexaman of the Altarian Confederation rose from his delegation's seating area. Commander Kethvil, while we appreciate the urgency with which you've convened this session, surely any threat significant enough to require full galactic response would have been detected by our intelligence services. Honorable Chancellor, that assumption is part of the problem we face today. Zara activated the first display, showing the standard galactic map with all known species and territories clearly marked. This represents our understanding of the galaxy as of 6 months ago. 47 member species, dozens of independent systems, approximately 12 billion inhabited worlds. She changed the display to show the sensor readings from the void between, those mysterious energy signatures that had puzzled galactic intelligence for months. 3 months ago, deep space monitoring stations began detecting these signatures at the edge of our galaxy. Initial analysis suggested they were natural phenomena, stellar formation, gravitational anomalies, perhaps evidence of previously unknown civilizations. Senator Clythara of the Scythian Empire shifted in her specialized environmental suit, her translated voice carrying skepticism. Commander, if these are merely unidentified contacts, why the emergency session? Surely standard first contact protocols would be more appropriate than a full Security Council meeting. Because, Senator, these contacts are not unknown to everyone. Zara activated the next display, and the chamber fell silent. The hologram showed a detailed technical analysis of the energy signatures, overlaid with comparative data from human databases. The match was perfect. Delegates, I present evidence that one of our member species has been in possession of detailed intelligence about these contacts for over 50 years, and has been preparing for their arrival while maintaining complete operational secrecy. The chamber erupted in voices as delegates demanded explanations, clarifications, and answers that Zara didn't have the authority to provide. She raised her hand for silence. Honorable delegates, I would like to present Director Sarah Chen of the Human Colonial Administration. The reaction was immediate and mixed. Some delegates leaned forward with interest, others exchanged glances of suspicion, and more than a few began accessing their personal data systems to review what they knew about human activities. Director Chen entered the chamber with the same calm competence Zara had observed on New Geneva. She wore formal diplomatic attire, but her bearing remained unmistakably military as she approached the podium. Honorable delegates, Director Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. I appear before you today to provide information that my government has kept classified for reasons of galactic security. That information concerns an imminent threat to all inhabited worlds in this galaxy. Chancellor Vexaman stood again, his scaled features showing the kind of controlled anger that came from realizing he'd been deliberately kept in the dark. Director Chen, are you suggesting that the human government has been conducting intelligence operations throughout the galaxy without proper authorization or oversight? I'm stating that the human government has been preparing for a war that will determine whether any of us survive the next decade. The directness of the statement sent a chill through the chamber. Director Chen activated the holographic display, showing the familiar image of Earth's solar system. Delegates, I need to begin with a correction to the historical record. Humanity did not achieve spaceflight through peaceful scientific advancement. We achieved it through desperate necessity when our homeworld was attacked by an enemy that seeks the complete consumption of all biological matter in the galaxy. The display shifted to show the devastating battle footage that Zara had seen on New Geneva. Several delegates made sounds of distress as they watched human ships defending a burning Earth against an enemy that clearly intended nothing less than total annihilation. This enemy, which we call the Devourers, stripped Earth of most of its biological resources before we managed to evacuate our surviving population. They do not negotiate, they do not retreat, and they do not distinguish between military and civilian targets because they do not see us as intelligent beings. To them, we are simply biomass to be harvested. Senator Clythara's voice carried a note of disbelief. Director Chen, you're asking us to believe that humanity has been refugees from an extragalactic invasion for 50 years and never thought to inform the galactic community. Senator, we've been preparing the galactic community for 50 years. Every human trade mission, every diplomatic contact, every instance of human merchants mysteriously appearing to assist with security crises, all of it has been part of a systematic effort to evaluate galactic military capabilities and establish the infrastructure necessary to mount a unified defense. The chamber buzzed with conversation as delegates processed this information. It was Ambassador Thelnix of the Quantum Collective who voiced what many were thinking. Director Chen, you're describing a conspiracy that spans decades and involves the systematic deception of every government in the galaxy. Even if we accept your claims about this threat, how can we trust any species that has been lying to us for 50 years? Director Chen's expression hardened. Ambassador, we haven't been lying about our intentions. Every action we've taken has been designed to improve galactic security and defense capabilities. We've shared technology, provided military assistance, and helped resolve conflicts throughout known space. The only thing we've kept secret is the reason we were doing it. And what reason could justify such deception? Instead of answering immediately, Director Chen activated a new display. What appeared made several delegates recoil in shock. The hologram showed a star system that had once held 7 inhabited worlds. Now it was empty space marked by debris fields and the unmistakable signatures of complete planetary destruction. This is the Kelani system, approximately 40 light-years beyond our current borders. It was inhabited by a species that achieved spaceflight approximately 800 years ago. They built a civilization that spanned 12 worlds, developed art and science that would have enriched the galactic community. and established the kind of peaceful society that most of us aspire to create. The display zoomed in on one of the debris fields, showing twisted metal that had once been ships, space stations, and orbital habitats. The Devourers reached the Kelani system 2 years ago. What you're looking at is everything that remains of 12 billion individuals and 8 centuries of cultural development. They had 3 months' warning when the Devourers were detected entering their space. They sent diplomatic missions, they attempted communication, they even offered to share their territory and resources. Director Chen's voice carried a note of cold fury. The Devourers consumed their diplomats along with everyone else. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Chancellor Vexaman was the first to speak. Director, how do you know the details of what happened in the Kelani system? Because we were there. Human intelligence vessels have been tracking Devourer movements throughout this region of space for the past 5 years. We've documented 17 similar incidents in uninhabited or recently contacted systems. The pattern is always the same: complete consumption of biological matter, harvesting of useful materials, total destruction of anything that might be considered culture or civilization. Senator Clythara leaned forward in her environmental suit. You were there, but you didn't intervene. We couldn't. At the time, humanity had a total population of fewer than 20 million individuals scattered across 8 colony worlds. The Kelani had a population of 12 billion and a military that included 60,000 combat vessels. If they couldn't stop the Devourers, we certainly couldn't do it for them. Director Chen activated another display, this one showing human military installations throughout the galaxy. The scope of the network was staggering. But we could learn from their example. We've spent the past 5 years positioning resources, establishing supply lines, and building the kind of defensive network that might actually have a chance of stopping them. Ambassador Thelnick studied the display with obvious shock. Director Chen, this shows human military installations in every major star system in the galaxy. You've essentially militarized known space without anyone realizing it. We've prepared known space for a war that's coming whether we want it or not. She changed the display again, showing the sensor readings that had started the entire crisis. But now the readings were overlaid with detailed intelligence analysis. Delegates, these are not random contacts or natural phenomena. These are the leading elements of a Devourer assault fleet. Based on our projections, they will reach the Outer Rim colonies in approximately 4 months. The main force will arrive 6 months later. The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates shouted questions, demands, and accusations. Through it all, Director Chen remained calm, waiting for the initial shock to pass. It was Commander Zara who restored order, using the Council's authority to demand silence. Delegates, she announced, Director Chen is prepared to provide detailed briefings on Devourer capabilities, human defensive preparations, and recommended strategies for galactic defense. But first, we need to address the fundamental question. Do we unite against this threat, or do we waste precious time debating whether to trust the only species that has practical experience fighting them? Chancellor Vexaman stood slowly, his expression showing the kind of careful calculation that had made him a successful political leader for decades. Director Chen, assuming we accept your analysis of this threat, what exactly are you proposing? Complete military integration under unified command structure. Every species contributes their best ships, their most experienced crews, and their most advanced technology. We pool our resources, coordinate our strategies, and present a unified defense when the Devourers arrive. Under whose command? Senator Clythara asked. Under whatever command structure proves most effective. Delegates, we're not interested in political control or territorial conquest. We want to survive, and we want the galaxy to survive with us. Director Chen activated a final display, showing detailed tactical projections for various defensive scenarios. Based on our analysis, the galaxy has sufficient industrial capacity and military resources to stop the Devourers, but only if we coordinate our efforts perfectly. Any species that tries to handle this threat independently will be consumed before they can mount an effective defense. Ambassador Thelnick studied the projections carefully. Director Chen, these tactical analyses assume a level of cooperation that has never been achieved in galactic history. You're asking species that have been rivals for centuries to integrate their military forces completely. Ambassador, the Devourers don't care about our political rivalries. They'll consume rivals and allies with equal efficiency. The debate continued for hours, but Zara could see the shift in momentum. The evidence was overwhelming, the threat was undeniable, and the alternatives to cooperation were too horrible to contemplate. Finally, Chancellor Veximan called for a preliminary vote. All delegations in favor of establishing emergency military coordination, protocols to address the threat described by Director Chen. The vote was unanimous. As the session moved into detailed planning phases, Zara found herself thinking about the question that had started her investigation. Captain Marcus Chen's casual confidence in the face of overwhelming odds, his dismissal of serious threats as minor inconveniences. Now she understood. When you'd spent 50 years preparing to fight an enemy that wanted to eat your entire species, everything else really was a minor inconvenience. The question was whether the galaxy could learn to fight with the same desperate determination before it was too late. Outside the council chamber's massive windows, the stars looked peaceful and eternal. But Zara knew that somewhere in the darkness between those stars, an enemy was approaching that would test whether the galaxy's species could overcome their differences in time to save themselves. In 4 months, they would find out if human preparations had been enough. In 4 months, they would learn whether the galaxy was ready for war. 4 months later, the answer came in the form of massive energy signatures dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler sector. Commander Zara Kethful stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned Galactic Unity *, watching her tactical displays with a mixture of fascination and horror as the first Devourer ships materialized in normal space. The vessels were nothing like the sleek, purposeful designs that characterized galactic military engineering. Instead, they looked like something that had grown rather than being built, organic curves and impossible angles that hurt to look at directly. They moved with a fluid grace that suggested living muscle rather than mechanical propulsion. Sensor analysis, she requested, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. 67 vessels in the first wave, reported her tactical officer, a young Zenthari who had volunteered for the integrated crew program. Mass readings are inconsistent with known physics. They appear to be larger inside than outside. That's impossible. Yes, ma'am. The Devourers appear to specialize in impossible. Zara studied the formation patterns, noting how the alien vessels moved in perfect coordination despite having no visible communication arrays. After months of briefings and simulations, she was finally seeing the enemy that had haunted human nightmares for 50 years. They were worse than she had imagined. Communications from Fleet Command, her operations officer announced. Admiral Marcus Chen's face appeared on the main screen. The former merchant captain had accepted overall command of the Galactic Defense Fleet with the same casual competence he'd shown when dealing with pirates. Behind him, Zara could see the command center of Terra's Vengeance *, the massive dreadnought that served as flagship for humanity's contribution to the defense force. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. The Devourers have arrived in force, and they're moving directly toward the inhabited systems. This is not a scouting mission or a probing attack. This is the beginning of a full-scale assault on galactic civilization. The tactical display updated to show the enemy formation's projected course. They were heading straight for the colony worlds with no attempt at stealth or tactical subterfuge. All fleet elements implement Defense Plan Alpha. Remember, these things don't negotiate, they don't retreat, and they consider us food. Our job is to prove them wrong. As the communication ended, Zara felt the familiar tightness in her scales that came with pre-combat stress. Around her, the bridge crew prepared their stations with a kind of focused intensity that had become standard throughout the galactic fleet. The integration hadn't been easy. Combining 47 different military traditions into a unified force had required compromises that sometimes seemed impossible. But somehow, under human guidance and with the threat of extinction as motivation, it had worked. "Ma'am," her sensor operator called out, "I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the Devourer formation. Whatever they're planning, it's big." Before Zara could respond, space itself seemed to twist around the alien ships. Reality bent in ways that made her instruments scream in protest, and when the distortion cleared, The enemy fleet had doubled in size. "How?" she whispered. "Dimensional folding," came a calm voice from behind her. Zara turned to see Dr. James Harrison, the human physicist who served as her science advisor. "They're pulling additional ships from parallel space. It's theoretically possible, but the energy requirements should be astronomical." "Should be." The Devourers appear to have solved some fundamental problems in quantum mechanics that we're still working on. Unfortunately, they use those solutions primarily for killing things more efficiently. The enemy fleet began to move toward the first line of galactic defenses, a network of automated weapon platforms and sensor arrays that had been positioned throughout the outer system. As the Devourers approached, the platforms opened fire with every weapon in the galactic arsenal. The results were disappointing. Plasma bolts that should have vaporized any known ship simply passed through the alien vessels as if they weren't there. Quantum torpedoes detonated harmlessly against hulls that seemed to exist in several dimensions simultaneously. Even the experimental Nova cannons developed by the Altarian Confederation had no visible effect. "Admiral Chen to all fleet elements," came the voice from the command ship. "As expected, conventional weapons are ineffective. All ships implement Protocol 7. Protocol 7. Zara had hoped they wouldn't need it. Throughout the galactic fleet, ships began activating systems that most of their crews had been told were experimental communication arrays or advanced sensor packages. In reality, they were weapons developed from 50 years of human research into exotic physics and dimensional manipulation. The first shot came from Terra's Vengeance Asterisk. What emerged from the Dreadnought's main battery wasn't a bolt of energy or a projectile, but a fold in space itself that reached across thousands of kilometers to touch one of the Devourer vessels. The alien ship simply ceased to exist. "Direct hit," reported the tactical officer, his voice tight with disbelief. "The target has been completely removed from normal space." Around them, other ships in the fleet began firing their own exotic weapons. Reality displacement cannons that sent targets into parallel dimensions. Temporal distortion generators that aged enemy ships into dust in seconds. Probability manipulation devices that convinced the universe that certain alien vessels had never existed in the first place. The Devourers responded by doing something that made Zara's brain hurt to watch. Their ships began to phase in and out of visible reality, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously while maintaining perfect coordination and offensive capability. "They're adapting," Dr. Harrison observed with professional fascination. "They're shifting their dimensional presence to avoid our weapons while maintaining their ability to affect normal space." "How long before they fully adapt?" "At their current rate of learning, approximately 12 minutes. Zara activated her command channel. "Admiral Chen, this is Galactic Unity Asterisk. The enemy is adapting to our exotic weapons faster than projected." "Confirmed, all ships implement Protocol 12. Protocol 12 was the option that had been debated endlessly in planning sessions. The strategy that required complete trust between species that had been suspicious of each other for centuries. Throughout the fleet, human vessels began transmitting detailed technical specifications for their most advanced weapons systems. Not just the operating parameters, but the complete scientific principles that made the weapons possible. "Dr. Harrison," Zara said, "what are they doing?" "Sharing everything," the physicist replied with obvious amazement. "Every human ship is transmitting full technical data on dimensional manipulation, quantum field theory, temporal mechanics, scientific advances that represent 50 years of desperate research." "Why?" "Because they're trusting us to use it. Admiral Chen is betting that 47 species working together can adapt faster than one species working alone, even if that species has a million-year head start on advanced physics." Throughout the galactic fleet, ships began modifying their weapons in real time, incorporating human theoretical frameworks with their own technological capabilities. The results were staggering. Altarian Nova cannons began firing bolts of weaponized quantum uncertainty. Scythian warships launched torpedoes that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Zenthari fighters equipped with human-designed reality anchors began forcing enemy ships back into normal space where conventional weapons could affect them. The tide of battle began to turn. But the Devourers weren't finished adapting. "New contact," the sensor operator announced, his voice tight with strain. Something massive dropping out of hyperspace directly above the galactic plane. The tactical display updated to show a new signature that dwarfed everything else on the screen. The ship, if it could be called a ship, was larger than most space stations, its hull configurations suggesting capabilities that bordered on the incomprehensible. "Dimensional analysis indicates it's some kind of command vessel," Dr. Harrison reported. "It's coordinating the entire enemy fleet through quantum entanglement networks that exist outside normal space-time." Admiral Chen's voice cut through the tactical chatter. "All ships, priority target identified. If we can destroy their command ship, the rest of the fleet should lose coordination." "Admiral," Zara transmitted, "that thing is larger than our entire battle line. How do we even approach it?" "Very carefully, and with everything we've got." The combined fleet began forming up for an assault on the massive command vessel, but before they could coordinate their attack, the ship began to change. It was expanding. "It's not just getting larger," Dr. Harrison observed with growing alarm. "It's pulling matter from surrounding space and incorporating it into its own structure, including—" He didn't need to finish. On the tactical display, they could see debris from destroyed human ships being absorbed into the alien vessel's growing bulk. "Dr. Harrison," Zara asked quietly, "what happens if that thing reaches one of our inhabited worlds?" "It will consume everything. Population, infrastructure, the planet itself, everything gets absorbed and processed. Based on its current growth rate and energy consumption, it could strip a world bare in approximately 6 hours." Admiral Chen's voice came through the fleet communication system, carrying a note of grim determination. "All ships, new orders. We're not just trying to destroy their command vessel, we're trying to prevent it from reaching the colonies. Maximum attack, all weapons, everything we've got." The assault that followed was unlike anything in recorded military history. 47 species, working in perfect coordination, unleashing every weapon they possessed against an enemy that represented extinction for all of them. Reality warped around the battlefield as exotic weapons tore holes in spacetime itself. The Devourer command ship absorbed the attacks, growing larger and more dangerous with each passing minute. Then Captain Marcus Chen did something that would be remembered in military histories for the next 1,000 years. Terra's Pride, the merchant vessel that had started everything, broke away from the fleet formation and headed directly for the command ship. But instead of weapons, it transmitted a single message that reached every ship in the battle. "All vessels, this is Captain Chen. I'm initiating a dimensional cascade collapse centered on my position. You have 30 seconds to clear the area." Zara understood immediately what he was planning. "Admiral, he's going to use his ship as a dimensional bomb. The explosion will take out everything in a 50-kilometer radius, including himself." Admiral Chen's voice was quiet, carrying the weight of someone watching a family member make the ultimate sacrifice. "All ships, emergency withdrawal. Give him room to work." Captain Chen's ship accelerated toward the massive alien vessel, its hull glowing with energies that shouldn't have been possible to contain. At the last moment, just before impact, he transmitted one final message. "Why do we show no fear? Because some things are worth dying for." The explosion that followed wasn't visible in any normal sense. Instead, reality simply stopped existing in a perfect sphere around the impact point. The Devourer command ship, caught at the center of the dimensional collapse, was torn apart by forces that existed outside the normal universe. With their coordination center destroyed, the remaining Devourer ships began to lose coherence. Their perfect formations dissolved into chaos, their impossible movements becoming erratic and confused. The galactic fleet struck with everything they had left, targeting individual ships that could no longer adapt fast enough to survive conventional weapons. Within an hour, the battle was over. But the cost had been enormous. As damage reports came in from throughout the fleet, Zara found herself thinking about the courage it had taken for the humans to share their most advanced secrets with species they barely knew, trusting that cooperation would triumph over individual advantage. And about Captain Marcus Chen, who had faced down an entity larger than most space stations with the same casual confidence he'd shown when dealing with pirates. Now she finally understood the complete answer to the question that had haunted her for months. Humans showed no fear because they had learned that some things, like protecting the innocent, preserving civilization, ensuring the survival of all thinking beings, were more important than individual survival. They had faced extinction and chosen to fight not just for themselves, but for everyone. Admiral Chen's voice came through the fleet communication system, carrying exhaustion but also satisfaction. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. The immediate threat has been neutralized, but our intelligence suggests this was only the first wave. The main Devourer force is still out there, and they'll be back. He paused, and when he continued, his voice carried a note of quiet pride. But when they return, they won't be facing